Hello class 7th and welcome to your new chapter which is entitled The Turkish Invasion of India. Turks are the people who belonged to Turkey. Where is Turkey? Does anyone remember? Well, if you remember the map that I had shown you of the Middle East when you were studying your initial chapters, the rise of Christianity and the rise of Islam, there if you see the map of the Middle East, you will find Turkey over there, and in a little moment I'll show that map to you again. But right now, before we begin with this chapter, it will be nice to do a little recap of what we have studied already so far. So if you remember, we began with chapter 1, which was entitled The Rise of Christianity, and we saw about the birth of Jesus Christ and all the things that happened around that time. In the next chapter, we saw the spread of Christianity. And if you remember, in that chapter on page number 12, there was a little heading called Emergence of the Turks, and we had read about the Byzantine Empire and how the Turks kept attacking and they captured Constantinople. So we're talking about the same people, the Turks, and now they have made their way to India. From the Middle East, they have come to India. But before that, we had a look at chapter number 3, and which was Rise and Spread of Islam, and we saw the birth of Prophet Muhammad and how Islam spread from that time onwards, and we saw the various caliphates that were formed, and we read about the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and then we had a look on the achievements of the Arabs. And so these Arabs, from this place called Arabia, which is very much there today also, Saudi Arabia, it's all the same region in the Middle East. You can check the map again. Now these Arabs were doing very well, and they were very good in trading and business, and in many ways they were quite advanced, and already India had good business ties with Arabs, and some Indian kings, they imported horses from Arabia, and some of the Arab merchants, they came, they settled in South India, in the Malabar coast, and then also they began to spread their faith, and they began to build mosques, and that was no problem at all. The Indian rulers did not object to it, and they all were living together and learning from each other basically. But now in the 8th century CE, there was an invasion from the Arabs. You find that on page 25 of your textbook, and this invasion was by Muhammad bin Qasim. He was a general in the Umayyad dynasty, and he conquered Sindh in 712 and Multan in 713, and these territories remained under the Arab control for nearly 1.5 centuries. That means 150 years almost. Now, with the coming of more and more Arab people in our country, in India, there was more cultural exchange between Arabia and India. These were different people, there were different cultures, and there was an exchange. The Arabs translated many Sanskrit books into Arabic. They further developed science of astronomy and mathematics, and the Arabs gradually, they adapted to the Indian way of life, and the Indian way, and they freely intermingled with the local people. After the time of the Arabs was over, came in the Turks, and from 1000 CE onwards, many Turkish invaders entered India through the mountain passes in the northwest. Now, it is really important to see the political map of that time, because as you understand by now that the geographical areas, boundaries of that time were different, and today it's different. And so let us have a look at how the map was at that time, especially of this part of the world. So here is a map before you, and just have a look where India is, have a look where Middle East is, have a look at the distance between the Middle East and India. And as you can see, there are no water bodies on the way, so you could actually drive through, walk through from India to the Middle East. And so at that time, obviously there were no vehicles, so they walked and they were on horses, and they came all the way to India. Also, let us make a note that India at that time was not the India that we see today geographically. At that time, there was no Pakistan, there was no Afghanistan. It was all part of India. So India was a very big country at that time, right? And so, and also if you remember your geography, we have water bodies in the south, then we have the Himalaya mountains in the north and also in the northeast. But when we look at the northwest side, that is Pakistan, Afghanistan, that side is open. We do have some hills over there, but in between there are open mountain passes, and that is the place from where most of the invaders came to India. And the Turks found that way and they came to India, rather they invaded India. So the Turks took advantage of that open space and they invaded India. Now, beginning from this time, there were several invasions at different times by different rulers. The first set of invasions was led by Mahmood of Ghazni. So obviously Ghazni was a place, and I'll show you on the map where this place is. Here it is. And so Mahmood was the ruler of Ghazni, and now this place is in Afghanistan. And he wanted to make a big army, establish a big army. And he wanted to make his own place Ghazni, a very powerful kingdom in that whole region. And obviously for that you need money. So from where do you get the money? At that time India was very wealthy and rich. He heard about that and he put his eye on India and he decided to invade India. And now for the next 26 years, Mahmood of Ghazni invaded India 17 times. Can you imagine that? A very busy man. 17 times he invaded India. How was he able to do it? He took advantage of the weak political conditions of India. At that time, there was no unity among the rulers. There were different rulers ruling different parts of India, and they were all fighting with one another, and they all failed to challenge Mahmood of Ghazni. And Mahmood of Ghazni took advantage of that very fact. Now the rulers of that time in India were known as the Hindu Shahi rulers. And two of them were Jaipal and Anandpal. And their territories extended from Punjab to Afghanistan of that time. So Mahmood of Ghazni was able to defeat the Hindu Shahi rulers, and he got a large tribute from them. I'm sure you remember what a tribute is. You have studied in class 6th. If you can't remember, look up a dictionary. So, after this, he raided India several times, and you know where he raided? He raided the rich temple towns of India. The rich temple towns of India. Why? Why did he decide to invade the temple towns of India? Why were the temple towns rich? People give lots of donations in temples, right? And he knew that. He knew that in these temples there's a lot of money, and he wanted to loot it. And so that's exactly what he did. He plundered the enormous wealth of the temples and carried riches away to his homeland. Mahmud's most daring raids were against Mathura and Kannauj. Both of them are in Uttar Pradesh. And this was in 1018. And then in 1026, a very daring raid he made against Somnath temple. Somnath temple in Gujarat. It was stripped of all its wealth. Have a look at the picture. This is a picture of the recent times. Of course, it has been reconstructed and rebuilt. But he plundered it, he stripped it. Even the precious stones embedded in the temple walls were dug out. And all that he collected, all the booty he collected, he carried it away to Ghazni. Some historians have calculated that more than 50,000 people died defending the temple. People were trying to save the temple, and for that they had to fight with this invader, and about 50,000 people died. That's an estimate by some historians.